Welcome to the Dawgs Fantasy Football Podcast with your hosts, Justin Charles and Josh All.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dawgs Fantasy Football Podcast. Josh all alone with you guys here today. In Week 6, Justin just could not tolerate how bad his fantasy week went. All of his teams lost. He said, screw it, I'm done. Quitting fantasy forever. And he is off the podcast. He wants nothing to do with talking fantasy football anymore or anything like that. So it's just going to be me. And I'm just kidding. He's got a sick kid at home. Called me last minute, said, hey, man, not going to be able to make it into the studio today. And as I just had a sick little kid at my house a couple weeks ago. I totally get it. So Justin, take care of that kiddo, and I will take care of the fantasy talk for this week. So if you guys are watching on YouTube, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate it. Please go ahead, like the video, subscribe to this channel, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss anything new. We're probably going to ramp up more fantasy content. You know, we'll see what we do as the season goes on. We are very heavily invested in producing our Cleveland Browns podcast, although, well, yeah. If you guys saw any bit of that game yesterday, ain't a whole lot to talk about, but we'll get into some of that here in a little bit. But if you're listening on audio, especially, well, if you're on Spotify, please give us a 5-star rating and a follow over there. But if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we would very much appreciate if you guys would leave us a written 5-star review. Just scroll down to the bottom of the page here for the Fantasy Football Podcast and just tap 5-star, write a quick review, a great podcast, fun to listen to, good fantasy content, whatever you want. Just something quick and simple, and then post it, and that really does help us in the rankings. So we would appreciate that very much. So I am going to do my best here to manage everything as far as hosting the show, going through the fantasy output from yesterday. This is an episode where I was really hoping to have Justin here. Sorry, Justin, if you're listening, I don't mean that as a knock on you, buddy. But just because yesterday I had a whole family situation going on, not a bad thing. I mean, we had a get together. We were celebrating like 2 anniversaries, 5 birthdays in the past month, all kinds of crazy stuff going on right now in my family. So we got together. I was able to watch the Browns game, but not a whole ton of the other games. I've listened to a bunch of content about the games and I followed along, but just did not get to have my eyeballs on a ton of the games this weekend. But we'll still go through, talk about the fantasy matchups, the studs, the duds, some of these early waiver wire pickups, these injury situations, maybe some trade, kind of the normal stuff we talk about every week on here. So I guess I'll just kind of kick things off here in the quarterback realm of Week 6. And, Jared Goff, first of all, that Dallas-Detroit game, if you had anybody, for the most part, on Detroit, good for you. Like, your guys paid off. Pretty much everybody scored a touchdown at least, except for Jahmyr Gibbs, but I believe he still had double-digit fantasy points on the day. So a great day for Detroit. They were up so big on the Cowboys, and I've got Dak Prescott like everywhere. I've got CeeDee Lamb in a handful of leagues, Jake Ferguson. So at halftime, I'm looking at my fantasy scores and I'm seeing these guys. And I'm like, man, they're not doing jack so far. And I look at the score and I'm thinking, okay, they're going to have to come out fire and they got to come out pass heavy, pass crazy here in the second half. That'll get me some fantasy points for these guys. That didn't happen. Dak Prescott, I don't think even sniffed 10 fantasy points. He didn't get 200 yards. CeeDee Lamb, I don't even know what his final stat line ended up being, but Jake Ferguson, I think, had like 3 catches for 11 yards or something ridiculously low. All around, terrible game for the Cowboys. Thank God they have a bye week in Week 7 because they need to regroup. They need to figure some stuff out. And I'm not like a Cowboys fan. I'm not saying any of this for the Cowboys' sake. What I'm saying this stuff for is because my fantasy team needs the Cowboys to put out something on offense. So, Dallas, get your stuff figured out. Baker Mayfield, this dude, He has become a weekly starter in fantasy football, and it doesn't matter if it's super flex, single quarterback. If he's available on your waiver wires, you need to add him. I can almost guarantee he's not at this point. I mean, we're talking he's got 2 games out of 6 so far this year with just 1 touchdown. Then the other games, 4, 2, 3, 4. He did throw 3 interceptions yesterday, his first multi-interception game of the year, but he had 325 yards. Like I said, the 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's putting up 21 rushing yards, 34, and then 0, 10, 42, 29. So he does have like a small rushing baseline where you can pretty much pencil in 2 to 3 points rushing baseline for Baker, plus all the passing and these passing touchdowns. I think he's like the QB2 on the season, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see what it says here. Yeah, QB2 overall on the season. So good for Baker. And the Buccaneers, if you've got pieces there, you're happy. I know Mike Evans had a down day yesterday. Don't worry about it. Keep rolling Mike Evans out there. He's going to be fine. This is Mike Evans in a nutshell. I mean, Mike Evans, you put him in your lineup and you just sit back and say, this dude right here can totally single-handedly win me my week. Or he might get 2 points. It's just, with Mike Evans, there is a little bit of in-between, but not much. A lot of times it's either you get that super high end or you just don't get a whole heck of a lot and you just kind of ride with it. Caleb Williams. What are you guys thinking about Caleb Williams? And I'm, as I ask questions to the audience here, to you guys watching and listening, go ahead. If you're watching or if you're on Spotify, you can drop comments too now, and we can reply to them. So drop comments in here. We'll talk to you guys. Caleb Williams is kind of stepping things up for Chicago. They're like sneakily 4-2. They've got a great defense, and now the offense is starting to click. I don't know. There might be something here with the Chicago Bears, who's also the other team now, along with Dallas, on a bye week in Week 7. So if you've got your Cowboys and your Bears, those are the 2 teams on bye this week, so you won't be able to play these guys. But Caleb Williams is becoming a quarterback that in a single quarterback league, with how bad some of these other higher end quarterbacks have been, if he's on your waiver wire, I know he's going into the bye week, but if you've got a roster spot that you can afford to stash Caleb Williams until he gets back off bye, because when he comes off bye, guys, he gets Washington, super exploitable defense, Arizona, New England, Green Bay. He's got a stretch of some nice games here coming up. And the last 4 games, it's been 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns. He's had 2 300-plus yard games. This past week, it was 226. He had 4 touchdowns. He's running the ball. He had 56 yards rushing the week before, 34. He's the same kind of situation as Baker Mayfield. He's got a little bit of a rushing baseline, a little bit higher of a baseline ceiling than what Baker has. And Baker's got obviously the higher passing yardage ceiling. But Caleb's starting to throw touchdowns. They're starting to get it done. So he's a guy that if I'm in need of some QB help, I'm definitely seeing what I can do about Caleb Williams. It was nice to see Jalen Hurts get his wide receivers back and do a little something with them. I will say, though, watching the Browns-Eagles game, Jalen Hurts, if I've got Jalen Hurts in fantasy, which I do in one league, but this is more of like a dynasty thing, I'm probably going to see what I can get for him. My advice on Jalen Hurts right now would be maybe go kick the tires on your league mates, because I know I've got a couple dynasty leagues where Jalen Hurts is like gold. I know there's one. Justin's actually offered like 3 first-round picks recently to the Jalen Hurts manager, and he has turned it down, said no. He doesn't want to get rid of Jalen Hurts. I'm at the point where I think you might want to start seeing if you can sell at peak premium for Jalen Hurts right now in a dynasty league, because he has not been great so far this season. I can just go ahead and bring up his numbers here. I mean, it's been, let's see, week 1, he was 278. These are passing yards, 278-2, 183-1, 311 and no touchdowns, 158-1. And then yesterday against the Browns, 264-2. Now, he's got, obviously, his rushing, 33 yards, 85, 25, 20, 33. He's got only 2 rushing touchdowns this year. Now, last year he had 15, I believe it was. Let me double check on that. Yeah, 15 rushing touchdowns last year, 13 the year before, 10 the year before that. This year, 2. so far through 5 games for the Eagles and Jalen Hurts. I don't feel like the rushing touchdowns are going to be there. I don't think he's going to get anywhere close to 10 this year. I could be wrong. You could rip off a couple games here where he gets like 3 and, that kind of stuff. But that would involve this offense starting to click and look good. And, this is the game I watched every snap yesterday, and the Eagles do not look good. Jalen Hurts at one point was like 0 for 8. I don't know if he completed a pass in was it the first quarter maybe? I don't know. It was bad. He looked bad. I mean, I was watching the game and I was thinking, wow, for the first time, Deshaun Watson doesn't look like the worst quarterback on the field. Now, by the end of the game, obviously that had changed. But I'm a little bit nervous about Jalen Hurts. Now, with that being said, he does have a nice schedule coming up. He got the bye weeks already out of the way. He's got the Giants, the Bengals, the Jaguars, Dallas, Washington, the Rams, Baltimore, Carolina. Really the only tough secondary defensive matchup against passing, against quarterbacks that he has the rest of the year is week 1 of the fantasy playoffs, week 15 against Pittsburgh. But then after that, he gets Washington and Dallas again in the fantasy semis and the championship. And I'm not trying to look that far ahead, but I'm looking down at his schedule thinking, okay, that's why like in a redraft league, I've got Jalen Hurts and like I'm not moving him because I think the schedule is playing out very nicely. I think he's going to be okay. I think he's going to be a good fantasy quarterback for the rest of this season in a redraft league. Now, if I am in a dynasty league and I have Jalen Hurts and I'm not contending, or I'm 2-4, or 1-5, or even 3-3, just look at the state of your team, look at the state of your league. Are you going to contend this season? If you're going to be a contender this season, then I might back up a little bit of what I just said a few minutes ago. I'm not necessarily trying to move him right now if I'm seriously contending. But like I said, if I'm 1-5, 2-4, 3-3, I got a bunch of injuries. I got some tough matchups coming up. It just is not looking good for me this year. I am probably going to try to move Jalen Hurts for multiple first-round picks, maybe go to the J.J. McCarthy owner, see if you can get J.J. and like 2 firsts. So you get a young quarterback who next year is going to be the starter on a very awesome offense with a great offensive head coach, pass-happy, pass-friendly system, and then try to get some first-round picks added on top of that because I'm telling you, I don't know about the long-term sustainability for Jalen Hurts in the NFL. I could be completely wrong, but after the way things kind of tapered off last year, after kind of the up and downs roller coaster that this year has been so far, and then just watching him in person for a whole game yesterday, I don't see it. I think that he can continue to be a starting quarterback in the league, but is he going to be a high-end fantasy asset that can net you multiple first-round picks? I don't know how much longer he's going to be that. So that's why if I'm in a position where I'm not going to win this year probably, then I'm probably trying to see what I can get for him.
This episode is brought to you by Bodden Sports. Bodden Sports is your one-stop shop for all your athletic gear. Bodden started out perfecting and manufacturing the best balls in the business. Yeah, if that sounded dirty, that's more about your mind than my words. But hey, it's true. Baseballs, softballs, footballs, basketballs, volleyballs, soccer balls, you name it, and Bodden has engineered the highest standard sports balls available. And now they offer more than just sports balls. If you got kids playing baseball or softball, Bodden has batting gloves and bats to go along with both game balls and training balls. If you're into basketball, Bodden makes basketball specifically for indoor or outdoor use. Heck, Bodden even has all the equipment you need for pickleball, which is one sport that I hear everyone is playing and yet I still never have. And I need to fix that soon. But don't miss the backyard games section of Bodden's website where you can order everything you need for this upcoming outdoor season. Pool balls, backyard volleyball nets, croquet, bocce, horseshoes, cornhole, and more. Right now, you can get 10% off your entire order at Bodden Sports, BADEN Sports.com/dogs, DAWGS, and use promo code DOGS when you check out. That's 10% off all the top quality sporting gear you need this season. BoddenSports.com/dogs.
Drake May, hey, welcome to the NFL rookie debut. 20 for 33, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did have the 2 picks, but here we go. 5 rushes, 38 yards rushing. So I think Drake May with his legs, that was one of the assets that he had coming out of college. I think he's going to be okay. I think he's going to be all right. Now, this is a super flex speculative ad if he's out there, which obviously in a super flex league, he's probably not. Most quarterbacks are all taken up, but he's a guy to keep an eye on. I'm not going to dive too much into any more of these quarterbacks because I can see what time it is here, and I know we're going to be switching over to our main show soon. So I want to dive into some other positions. Just real quick, I want to hot mention like Bo Nix. Bo Nix is quietly putting up good fantasy football numbers. I mean, yesterday was the first time he's thrown an interception in the last 4 games. He's rushing. He has 61 yards rushing. He started off the season 35, 25, 47. Then the last 2 weeks, just 3 yards, 9 yards, and then yesterday back to 61 against the Chargers. He's got a pretty friendly schedule coming up too down the stretch. And I think that Bo Nix is a guy that if you're in quarterback, need of quarterback help, more in a super flex league, but I'd be looking at him, seeing if maybe I can acquire him. Just the rookie quarterbacks this year have been a pleasant surprise so far, and it's early. It's still early in the season. You got Jaden Daniels is still killing it. Bo Nix is doing well. Drake May looked all right the other day. Caleb Williams, obviously. So these guys are giving a little boon to the quarterback position in fantasy football because you've got I know I invested heavily in Anthony Richardson. So far, horrible investment. So we'll see if he can get back on the field this week. Running back position. All right. Running back 1 on the week. Again, a game that I did not get to catch a whole lot of. I did see some of it. But we're looking at Tampa Bay Buccaneers running back. Who, guys? Rashad White? No. Oh, Bucky Irving. No. Sean Tucker. Okay, so Sean Tucker goes out. RB1 on the week. 14 carries, 136 yards, and a touchdown. Caught 3 of 3 targets for 56 yards and a second score. 33.7 fantasy points. The kicker with Sean Tucker is only played 38% of the snaps. Got a lot of his production late in the game whenever Tampa Bay was up big. Multiple scores over the Saints. So he is a guy that as far as waivers go, I'm probably trying to, first of all, we need to look up and see what is the situation with Rashad White this week. Moving into week 7, is he projected to be okay? Is he projected to be available? Or are they thinking that he's going to miss another week, maybe multiple? We'll see how it goes. If that's the case, then Sean Tucker definitely is a guy you want to add to your bench. You want to see what's going to happen with this backfield. But if Rashad White, again, if they're saying he's probably going to come back, then maybe I'm not wasting the fab on what could just be like a one-off blow-up game for a guy. Joe Mixon came back from his injury, immediately went right back to what he's been doing, 13 for 102 and 1, caught 2 passes for 30 yards and another touchdown. So Joe Mixon, excuse me, guys, right back to where he was before he got injured. Derrick Henry was such a total miss for me. I know I was kind of out. Not that I didn't think he could still be good. I just thought, with the Ravens, maybe he doesn't get quite the heavy workload because Lamar's going to still run it a lot. They'll probably try to just the Ravens are always bullying other teams to the point where I just didn't think they would need to feed Derrick Henry 20-plus times a game. I was so wrong. 24 carries, another 20-plus carry game, 132 yards, 2 more touchdowns. He's scored at least 1 touchdown in every game so far this season. He is a monster. And I was kind of upset because in the Dynasty League where he was on a very bad team that I could have acquired him, I kind of drug my feet. Wasn't sure if I wanted to put in an offer to try to get Derrick Henry in my squad 2 weeks ago. And somebody came in and offered a first-round pick for him, and that was accepted. And I thought I probably could have done a first-round pick for Derrick Henry. Oh, well. Bijan Robinson. Finally, we talked about him last week as like a buy low, not necessarily a buy low because you're not going to get him low, but as a buy opportunity guy, like, hey, look, now the window's open to maybe go get Bijan. And that window is probably closed, although maybe the Bijan owner's looking at the Tyler Algier performance and saying, well, I don't know, man. He did outproduce him. It's just that Bijan got the 2 touchdowns, 15 for 95 and 2, caught 3 passes for just 10 yards. The passing work for Bijan Robinson it's a little concerning. I'm not sure why they're not using him more in that regard, but I'm sure better days are still ahead. David Montgomery just got a 2-year contract extension with the Lions. They plan to utilize him like this all the time. 12 carries, 80 yards, 2 more touchdowns again. Another dude scored a touchdown in every single game so far this season. Doesn't catch a ton of passes, doesn't matter because he puts up the yards and the scores. Najee Harris actually looked good yesterday. He's starting to run more like what I expected Najee Harris to run, or what I expected him to look like when he came out of Alabama. So we'll see. I think Jaylen Warren, again, did not get to catch a ton of these games, but I think he's back from the injury, so we'll see how the workload, balance goes as the season moves forward. They've got a bye week here coming up in week 9, so maybe they start to shift some things. We'll see how it goes. DeAndre Swift, again, just 3 weeks in a row, just another 17 for 91 and 1, caught 4 passes for 28. They're on a bye, and then they come out and they got Washington, Arizona, New England, Green Bay. The same schedule I was talking about with Caleb Williams. So, what looked like a total bust, and I thought, DeAndre Swift was, I heard this from a lot of people, and I agreed completely. I was like the Miles Sanders of this season. Miles Sanders got the big contract last year to go to Carolina, and then just didn't play well, and eventually was just shoved to the side, and that was that. And I thought, yep, that's what's going to happen to DeAndre Swift this year. He's going to come out, he's going to play like crap, they're going to shove him to the side. It's going to be Roschon, Khalil Herbert. And no, they made the big public threat, essentially, like, hey, we're going to give Roschon Johnson the primary work. We're going to give him a look. Back in week 4, and, Swift just comes out 16 for 93 and 1, catches 7 for 72, and has been on a monster tear ever since then. Tyrone Tracy, this is a guy I'm super interested in. I was very high on him coming out of the draft, and I've stashed him in a couple spots. I played him this past week in a couple spots because I had to, and as long as Devin Singletary is out, Tyrone Tracy is a guy that I want to get my hands on if I can, because he's got Philly coming up next week and then Pittsburgh. But after that, if Singletary ends up staying out with the injury, or if Tracy just starts to take over that lead back role because he's been so good, then it's Washington, Carolina, Tampa Bay, Dallas, New Orleans. He gets some good matchups, and he had 84% of the snaps in the game last night against Cincinnati. 17 for 50, not the best yards per carry, but he did have the touchdown. But he caught 6 passes on 6 targets for 57 yards. That's what you're looking for from Tyrone Tracy. He is a converted wide receiver. Back in college, I think he had 1 or 2 years in college as a running back, transition from a receiver. So he's very natural catching the football. So I definitely like me some Tyrone Tracy. And I'm just scrolling through here, looking at some names. Pay attention to the Jordan Mason situation in San Francisco early in that game against the Eagles. So if he's out, a lot of what we talked about all season was, they would still ride Jerome Ford and ease Nick Chubb back into action. I mean, they still have Deontay Foreman. They leaned heavily on Pierre Strong after Ford went out, but they might be tempted to use a little bit more of Nick Chubb now that Jerome Ford is out. Again, with the Browns right now, guys, I wouldn't expect anything great from anybody, not even Nick Chubb. Because, one, this team does not want to run the ball. And they even made a bigger commitment yesterday in the Eagles game to try to run the ball. But whether they try to run the ball or they don't try to run the ball, the passing game is trash. It is terrible. There's no production from it whatsoever. The Browns have not scored a touchdown on offense in the last 29 drives. They are the first team in the last decade to not hit 20 points in any of the team's first 6 games of a season. They suck. So the same advice applies from last week and probably the week before until Amari Cooper gets traded, because I'm sure he's going to get traded here at some point. The Browns have no other than the fact that they've already guaranteed his entire salary for this year. They've got no incentive to hold him. Might as well get a couple draft picks or a draft pick for him or something, whatever you can get, because this team ain't going to win another game at the rate they're going, and they're not making a QB change. So, I guess that's that. But yeah, so if you got Nick Chubb, I would not be playing him on Sunday. I would definitely be just keeping him on my bench, seeing what happens, seeing how the splits go, and then just kind of. And then the week after that's Baltimore, and you cannot run the ball against Baltimore. They shut down the run games, so the Browns are pretty much screwed. They're going to shut down our run game, and then we can't pass. So I don't want to dive too much into Browns misery. I got a whole nother hour bookmarked for that here in a little bit. So let's move over to wide receivers. Chris freaking Godwin. When Mike Evans has a bad game right now, you know Chris Godwin went out and had a good one, 11 for 125 and 2 touchdowns. This is coming off of back-to-back 9-point weeks where he didn't reach double-digit fantasy points, but he's back on track. Wide receiver 1 on the week. A.J. Brown went out, came back from the hamstring injury. He missed the last 3 games of the season for the Eagles, came out against the Browns yesterday, 6 catches on 9 targets, 116 yards, and a very nice touchdown. He actually had a couple of really nice catches that I was watching, obviously, with family members and friends, and I would look at people and say, I don't know how he caught that. Like, improbable catches, A.J. Brown equals completions. So I just got a notification on my phone as I'm recording this. It says Saints wide receiver Rashid Shaheed has a concerning, in quotes, knee injury and did not practice today. So if you've got New Orleans Saints players, first of all, I don't know how many of those guys you even have. They play Thursday night against the Broncos. Broncos top-end defense right now. I wouldn't want to play anybody against the Broncos. I mean, if I've got Alvin Kamara, I'm playing him. That's it, guys. That is it. Chris Olave is not going to play. He went out, after one catch, and he fumbled and had a concussion yesterday. So Chris Olave is not playing Thursday night, and now it looks like Rashid Shaheed is not playing Thursday night. There are 0 Saints players that I even care about on the waivers this week. There's no receivers. I don't care about Bub Means. I don't care about any of these guys. I don't care about Jawan Johnson. I don't care. I don't want anything to do with the Saints. They've got Spencer Rattler starting, rookie quarterback. Denver's going to eviscerate the Saints. Alvin Kamara is about your only playable asset because he'll get a bunch of dump-off passes. I don't expect a whole big rushing output against the Broncos. I think the Broncos are going to have their way with the Saints on Thursday night. So just a little breaking news update for you guys there.
This episode is brought to you by Danger Coffee. We talk about how Danger Coffee is made free from mold toxins that are in 45% of the world's coffee, but that's not all that Danger Coffee has to offer. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. They make you feel sick, tired, stressed, and they can give you brain fog. These deficiencies negatively affect your immune system, your digestion, sleep, metabolism. Have you ever wondered why you get an initial burst from your coffee, but then you get that little crash not long after? Danger Coffee's patent-pending process remineralizes your body with more than 50 trace minerals and electrolytes, leaving you more energized, engaged, powerful. These micronutrients enter the cells to boost performance. They bind to toxins to provide detoxification support. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line, guys, is minerals matter, and most of us really don't get enough of them on a daily basis. Danger Coffee delivers micronutrients, plus it gives you access to the minerals you already have. Head to dangercoffee.com, use our code DAWGS, DAWGS, for 10% off your order, and that code can be used over and over, so you get 10% off every order you make using code DAWGS. It's time to start every day off with a cup of coffee that gets you going and actually keeps you going. dangercoffee.com, code DAWGS.
Terry McLaurin just looks like he might finally have the quarterback that we've always wanted Terry McLaurin to have. 7 more targets, 6 catches, 53 yards, 2 touchdowns yesterday from Jaden Daniels against the Baltimore Ravens. Scary Terry's the guy that started off slow, just 2 points, 5 points in his first 2 weeks, but then it was 19, 14, 12, 20. And he's got Carolina coming up in week 7. So fire up Terry McLaurin. I like what the Commanders are doing. Gabe Davis, tough game for the Jaguars in London against the Bears. They have a very good defense. Gabe Davis has been just absolute ass this year. 3 catches, 2 catches, 1 catch, 3 catches. Just 5 catches yesterday, 45 yards, but he did catch 2 touchdowns. That's the kind of, I was hoping for that stat line from Brian Thomas Jr., But again, Brian Thomas Jr. is their best receiver, so clearly the Bears were going to take him away. And then it was just kind of Gabe Davis with the touchdowns, Evan Ingram with all the other catches, and the Jaguars, like the Browns, totally suck. A guy that I'm kind of interested in on the waivers this week would be Demario Douglas for the Patriots. With Drake May coming in, I remember hearing reports and reading stuff all offseason training camp and stuff about how he liked Demario Douglas. I believe he called him because Drake May had Josh Downs 2 years ago at North Carolina, and they played very well together in college. And I remember him referring to Demario Pop Douglas is his nickname, as his Josh Downs on the Patriots. And yesterday, 9 targets, 6 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown. I think that if you need wide receiver help, if you've got injuries on your team, Pop Douglas is a guy that I'm trying to add on waivers this week, because I think that with Drake May there, he could continue to be a safety valve for him and a PPR, kind of a PPR machine for this offense that is in desperate need of anything to get them going. I think Stephon Diggs did a nice job. I mean, he's going to continue to be what he's been pretty much the whole season, but with a little more emphasis on getting him the ball now that Nico Collins is out for the next 3 games at least. So Diggs is a guy that, you know, if you had Nico and you're kind of hurting, maybe you could try to swing a deal to try to get a couple weeks out of Diggs. And again, even when Nico comes back, I think Diggs is still going to be fine. I think he's a playable fantasy player, but his ceiling is definitely increased right now with Nico on the shelf. And then just trying to look down here at a couple more of these wide receivers. Again, like a huge dud here, way down here at wide receiver 22. CeeDee Lamb caught 7 passes on 14 targets for just 89 yards. I expect the Dallas Cowboys offense to kind of get things rolling a little bit better coming out of the bye week. So we'll see how they can kind of perform down the stretch. But it was, if you remember last year, it was kind of a slow start in terms of, you know, what you expected for Dak and CD and the Cowboys offense coming out of the gate. But then the back half of the year, they flipped a switch, lit it on fire, and they were just putting up massive passing numbers, kind of expecting the same thing again this season. Another guy that I had to pick up in a couple spots last week because I was decimated by injuries, Darius Slayton, wide receiver for the New York Giants. This is back-to-back weeks now that Malik Nabers has been out with a concussion. He's gotten 11 targets in both these games last night was 6 for 57. Last week was 8 for 122 and a score. But Slayton is definitely one of those guys that you can spot start in a flex situation if you need to, as long as Malik Nabers is out. Now, Malik Nabers comes back this week from the concussion, I would expect. I would not be wanting to start Slayton, though. If you have to, I think you can, but if you have another option, I would go with that option. See how it goes. See if maybe the increased involvement the last couple of weeks, the increased targets with Malik Nabers out, if that earns him a little higher target share once Nabers comes back. But, I mean, the Giants do have Philly in Week 7, which is a nice secondary to try to throw on. But again, if Nabers is back, I'm going to hold on to Slayton. I just want to see what happens, but I just don't have the confidence to stick him in there into my lineup. If I'm not getting to any players or certain players that you guys want to hear about, just drop it in the comments. Be happy to talk to you down there about any of these guys. We'll just switch over to tight ends real fast here. Cole Kmet, after a couple down weeks, just 3 catches for 34, 3 for 57 the last 2 weeks. Yesterday, 5 for 70 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, when he goes off, he goes off. They're on a bye this week. If somebody drops him to waivers and you need tight end help, grab him, sure, stash him. The tight end landscape right now is it's ugly. George Kittle, if there's any way you can get your hands on George Kittle for this year, if you really want an edge at tight end, he's your guy. He's catching touchdowns. He's getting targets and yards, and he's the guy. George Kittle is the guy. He'll be tight end 1 as long as he doesn't get hurt. He'll be tight end 1. Evan Ingram came back from his hamstring injury. 10 targets, 10 catches, 102 yards. That is an Evan Ingram game if I've ever seen it. Mark Andrews, hey, welcome back to Fantasy Relevance. I don't know, guys. Maybe not. I mean, 4 targets, just 3 catches, 66 yards, though. And he did finally catch a touchdown, but I don't know. I do not have the confidence to put Mark Andrews in my lineup, and I really don't even have I got one league where I dropped him, and he's been sitting on waivers for 2 weeks now. Nobody wants him, and I don't think I want him. So, I mean, if he comes out and he's going to start catching 50-plus yards a game and catching a touchdown here and there, all right, I'll eat crow on it, but I'm kind of out right now on Mark Andrews. Trey McBride, I think, is going to be a great play next week because I think Marvin Harrison's another guy that went out early with a concussion, screwed a lot of people over in fantasy. So I think Trey McBride will be a nice play. And then, Sam Laporta, don't be too misled by his fantasy stat line. He had 12 points in fantasy. That's awesome. 12.7. All right. He was tight end, whatever, 6 or something on the week. He caught one pass on one target for 52 yards and a touchdown. So, for the guy that was drafted tight end 1 in most fantasy leagues this year, he has been a total disappointment, probably even worse than Mark Andrews for what he was expected to be. And then, again, Brock Bowers just continues to do his thing. 10 more targets, 9 catches, 71 yards. He's not catching touchdowns right now. He's only got 1 on the year. But the targets are there. The snap share is there. He's catching passes. He's racking up yards. Brock Bowers, if there's anybody that will, all health considered, if there's anybody who's going to challenge George Kittle for that tight end 1 spot by the end of the year, it's going to be Brock Bowers. And honestly, if anything holds him back outside of injury, it'll be lack of touchdowns. But he's awesome. He is awesome. If you got him, good for you. If you can get him, try. Probably not going to have any luck in that department. But that's pretty much all I want to dive into here today. Again, kind of tough running it through myself. I don't have my partner in crime here, Justin, to bounce things off of, and we'll get back in here next week. Hopefully his kids are all healthy next week, and he'll be in the studio with me. But again, if you've got questions, comments, start sit, questions, trade ideas, proposals, things that you want to run by us, just drop them in the comments. We'll be very happy to answer you guys. We get notifications whenever you guys comment, so we don't miss them. We get right back in there and make sure we respond because we love talking to you guys. That's why we started this podcast in the first place. We love talking fantasy. We love talking to each other about fantasy. We love talking to you guys about fantasy. So take advantage of the platform. That's what we're here for, and that's what we want to do. Is just play fantasy, have fun with fantasy, and hopefully win some fantasy games. So good luck to everybody this week, and hopefully, like I said, Justin will be back next week, and I don't really know what to say, guys. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Again, if you're on YouTube, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, tap that notification bell. 5-star reviews on the audio platforms helps us a ton, and that's going to wrap her up for the day. So I will talk to you guys along with Justin, hopefully, again next week. Good luck in week 7, everybody.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dawgs Fantasy Football Podcast. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and follow the podcast on social media at the Dawgs Fantasy.